What is up, my dudes? It's Lucas, and you are once again watching Fine Tuning. This is, of course, the next part in my series where I design and build myself a custom guitar from parts, assemble a custom guitar, if you will. And after much research and hemming and hawing and deliberating and interviewing people, I shall gild the lily no further. Let's order some parts. All right, let's head to Warmoth's website and order a neck and a body. Let's start with the body. So I'm gonna go to bodies down here, and I have decided, drum roll, on a Meadowhawk. All right, so that's kind of what the Meadowhawk looks like. But we're gonna build a custom Meadowhawk. So we're gonna go over here to custom. All right, so we'll start at the top and we'll work our way down. So for construction, our only option here is solid, that's fine. We're gonna choose basswood, or basswood, however you'd like to say it. Aaron and I are still on the fence about that one. We're gonna do no laminate top. And I opted to do no laminate top rather than a plain maple veneer top because I decided to go with a Kaler tremolo. And the way the Kaler works, it doesn't have like pivot posts that sit in the body and have pressure applied to them. It's more like a flat base. And so I'm not really worried about it wearing out over time, like rocking back and forth the way like a Floyd's posts would. So I'm gonna go with no laminate top since I'm gonna paint it most likely an opaque color anyway. Of course, we want right-handed. Correct-handed, as I like to call it. Control cavity rear out, that's our only option. All right, so now we're gonna get into some customization stuff. So for neck pickup, I'm gonna go with a Strat. I do not want the 24 fret reposition because I want a 22 fret neck. All that would do, if you're curious, is just move the neck pickup this way a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. For our middle pickup, we're going to do yet another Strat pickup. And then for our bridge pickup, I'm gonna go with a wood mount humbucker. Wood-mounted pickups is something I've discovered that I kind of prefer the sound of. It comes down to the guitars that I've had that kind of pickup in, like my Aerodyne Strats, and like I've had a Wolfgang or a few Wolfgangs, stuff like that. There's a little something that happens different with the pickup being mounted directly to the wood, I think. It's a little bit of a pain to get it to sit at the right angle and get it to be secure and stuff and like do what you want it to do, but I think the sound is worth it. And ultimately, once you get it stuck in there, it's pretty sturdy. So now for controls, what we're gonna do is volume 1, volume 2, tone 1, and I'm not going to do the upper toggle because I'm gonna use these 3 holes right here. This is like right behind the camera, so I can't really see it. I'm gonna use these 3 holes right here for volume, tone, tone, rather than volume, volume, tone. And I'm somewhere in this vicinity of this large cavity, I'm going to install a 5-way switch. And so I don't need the upper bout toggle here. Sorry, Aaron, I know I'm hurting your feelings. If this guitar ends up being as like awesome as I think it's gonna be, then I'll probably come back later and do another one as just like a double humbucker with a stop tail, and then I will put the upper bout toggle on it. So forgive me, Aaron. All right, jack route. We are gonna go with the 3/4 inch side jack hole. We're just gonna do the standard either football or square metal plate thing on the side, just kind of like you'd see on a Gibson or PRS or something like that. Okay, bridge route. So this is where it gets a little tricky because Kaler, I talked to Spike there at Warmoth, and Kaler is still an option. You can get a Kaler route, but it's not listed on the website, so you have to kind of like ask for it specifically. And there's a little bit of an upcharge, not for that, but for doing the neck pocket angle to kind of make up for the way the Kaler works. So what I'm gonna do is select tremolo, and I'm going to go to Floyd Rose angled pocket here, and that adds $10. And then when I get to the end of this, I'm just gonna put a note in there that says I want a Kaler route, but that $10 is gonna cover that angled neck pocket. Would you like Warmoth to install the bridge studs? There are no bridge studs, so no. All right, mounting holes, we are going to do the standard 4-bolt mounting. And then neck pocket shape, we are gonna do Strat. I do want the custom contoured heel because it feels nice. And then for battery box, I do not need one, so no. Because I'm a man and I play passive pickups. I'm just kidding, active pickups are fine too, it's just not my jam. All right, and then finally paint category, this is important. So we're gonna go to DIY paint ready. And if you missed the video with me and Aaron from Warmoth talking about this, you can go back and watch it, but all DIY paint ready is it's all of the stuff that leads up to them spraying paint on it. So it's gonna get sanded and filled, like rain filled, and like they're gonna put a sealer coat on it and then they're gonna sand it really, really smooth, like just right before it would go to paint, and then not do anything else. And that is terrific because if you've ever finished anything, much less a guitar, you know that to make a finish look great, it really is all the prep work. So I'm gonna let them do all of the, what I would call the like hardest work, the most time consuming work, and put a great like pre kind of paint finish on it. So it is kind of a finish, but it's just like a sanding sealer coat. And it's gonna be nice and smooth so that I can more or less just go ahead and go directly to painting it and not have to worry about grain filling and all that mess. And we're gonna add that to the cart. So that body with all those options comes to $365, which, I mean, and this is April of 2026, which for a custom body like this with all these cool options and made out of the wood and all that stuff, $365 is pretty great. It is gonna go up just a tiny bit because I'm going to also ask them for another menu option, which is extra light. And again, if you haven't seen this, you can see me and Aaron talk about it in the previous video, but you can request extra light, and all that means is they're gonna go find the lightest piece of whatever wood you select from the stock that they have currently. So that's not gonna like guarantee you a weight specifically, but it will give you the lightest that they have currently. So what I want is an extra light piece of basswood, basswood, because I like the sound and the feel of that wood, but I am gonna put a pretty significant electronics rig and tremolo rig in the guitar, and I wanna try and keep it as light as I can. So I'm gonna try to do as much with the wood before I start adding all the hardware and electronics and everything. A Kaler, you know, it adds some weight to the guitar. All right, so our body is constructed. Let's go to our neck. All right, once again, I have decided to go with a Meadowhawk neck, which is gonna look something like this. You can see we have some beautiful Meadowhawk necks here. Different cool kinds of figured wood. But I'm gonna build one custom. But first I'm gonna take a sip of this delicious Brady's coffee out of my Tervis mug. Sponsor me! Okay, and this is where it's gonna get a little more pricey, relatively speaking, because I'm gonna do some things to the neck, add some options and stuff that are gonna kind of start to rack up towards the end. So the neck is gonna cost me more than the body, which is fine because the neck is, I would argue, the most important part of the guitar anyway. That's what you're contacting. All right, so let's start with construction here. So our options are modern tilt-back Gibson scale conversion, and tilt-back baritone scale conversion. So the modern tilt-back, that's gonna be the standard scarf joint neck, and it's gonna have a tilt-back headstock on an angle and a 25.5-inch scale, like the standard classic Fender type scale. The tilt-back Gibson scale thing, exactly the same thing, except it's a slightly shorter scale, 24 3/4. And then the baritone scale is like I think it's a 27 or something like that. That's a moot point. I'm not gonna do a baritone guitar yet. I have opted to go with the Gibson scale conversion. And the reason being, although if you listen to my playing, you would be forgiven for thinking that guy really likes like Fender type players. And it's true, I do. I'm heavily influenced by guys like Stevie Ray and Eric Johnson and Eric Clapton and all these guys who are kind of traditionally Fender type guys. But I don't have giant hands. And I don't, you know, like my fingers are not super long or anything. And I kind of prefer the shortness of the Gibson scale. It just makes things a little easier for me to do. And to me, it also feels like it has a little less tension. And I sort of grew up playing Gibson guitars. My first like great guitar was a Gibson SG. Again, you can see more about that in one of my earlier videos. So I'm gonna go with the Gibson scale conversion. All right, shaft wood. We are going to go with 3A flame maple. Now, I talked with Aaron about this. I just decided that I kind of want to keep the guitar understated looking because that's just the way that I like it to be. I like the guitar not to be sort of ostentatious looking. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver playing-wise, if that makes sense. But what I do like is that beautiful figured maple in my hand just for me. So that's like kind of my way of making the guitar elegant and beautiful in a, you know, sort of more ostentatious way, but just for me. And I know that might be ridiculous to some of you, like, why wouldn't you do the flame top, whatever. I mean, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna do a 3A flame maple neck. All right, let's move on to the fretboard wood. I really went back and forth with this, and I was sort of going back and forth between a dark piece of ebony and a dark piece of Indian rosewood. I like them both. They both feel nice. They both have a cool look. But ultimately, because of another choice that I'm gonna make here in a second, I decided to go with the rosewood. I like the way rosewood looks and feels under my fingers. It's a classic guitar look. Most of my favorite guitars are rosewood. I do have some great ebony stuff, but most of my favorite guitars are rosewood. So I'm gonna go with a dark piece of Indian rosewood here. And then for the nut width, I am going to go with 1 11/16 or 43 millimeters. That's the modern medium profile. And the reason is my DGT, my PRS DGT is like arguably my favorite guitar to play in terms of the way it feels in my hands, and that has a 1 11/16 nut. So I'm gonna go with that. Modern medium, it's not huge, but it's not super skinny like my G&L or something like that. Right-handed, left-handed. So you would think this is easy, right? You want to do right-handed, but actually I'm going to do right-handed reverse. And all that means is that the neck is going to look identical to this, but it's going to flip the headstock. So let me just click it. All right, and now you see the headstock has flipped. And again, I went back and forth with this, but the reason I decided is because I'm kind of doing a hybrid of like Gibson and Fender and some other type stuff that I really like. And I noticed that when you flip that headstock around that way, again, Aaron is probably just crying, I'm so sorry. I noticed that when you flip the headstock around this way, kind of right here, you get a little bit of that Fender Strat thing, which I sort of dig on this headstock. I think this headstock now kind of reminds me of like an interesting combination of like a PRS and a Jackson and a Fender. And I just think it looks really cool like that. And of course, you've got this beautiful straight string pull. So I'm gonna go with right-handed reverse. Now, for anyone thinking, well, why wouldn't you just do left-handed? Isn't that the same thing? It's about neck profiles and where they put the dots. So that's important to note. So if you want the headstock reversed, you can do that, but make sure you do right-handed reverse. It's very important. All right, moving to neck back profile. This one's actually a no-brainer for me. I'm gonna go right down to SRV, and we're gonna click that. And the SRV profile is asymmetrical. And the reason I'm going with this is because I have had quite a few SRV neck profiles in my hands before building guitars for people, and also the original SRV Strat necks, which kind of have a similar type thing. And it's asymmetrical, but in the most beautiful, comfortable way. I just really, really like that neck profile. So that's what we're gonna do is an SRV neck profile. Now moving on to fretboard radius. We have all these radii here, lots of options. I love that Warmoth gives you those options. I'm gonna go with a 10 to 16 compound. And the reason is, my guitars that I've played the most over the years are PRSs, and they are almost exclusively 10-inch, just straight 10-inch radius guitars all the way up the board. And all the compounding to 16 radius is gonna do is just sort of flatten it as it goes up, and that's just gonna make it so that you can get your action a little lower, kind of bend a little easier, stuff like that. But it's gonna, for the most part, sort of feel like the guitar radius that I'm most comfortable with. And any shallower than that, and I start to notice it, but I don't enjoy a flatter radius down where the cowboy chord area is. I don't like the way that feels. I would rather have a little bit more round there. Like a 12 would be okay, a 12 to 16 would be okay, but I'm gonna go with the 10 to 16 since it's an option. Number of frets, not a lot of choices here, but I would've gone with 22 anyway. Scallops, no. Scallops are cool. I can definitely play scalloped neck guitars. I have done it before. But I'm gonna use pretty good sized frets, and so to me the scallop is kind of not that helpful. I'd rather just use bigger frets. Binding, yes, I do want to do binding. I went back and forth about this too, but I ultimately decided on binding because I kind of wanted to do like a mishmash of a bunch of things from my favorite guitars over the years, the ones that have served as my #1 for periods of time. And one of the things that I love about my SG, my very first like main guitar that I got when I was 15, was that binding. I loved the way that it had the binding and the trapezoid inlays. It just was very elegant and classy looking, and not like over the top, but really nice. Like a nice pair of Sunday slacks and a shirt and a tie, you know what I'm saying? That's what it looked like. So I'm gonna go with, instead of cream binding, that would be what my SG has and a lot of my other guitars, I'm gonna go with Ivoroid binding, which is kind of a more white color, like an off-white color. And the reason is, I'm gonna use a lot of white components on this guitar, like the pickups and the knobs and stuff like that, and I don't like mixing and matching white and cream too much. I tend not to like the way that looks. It's hard to get it to look right. So I'm gonna go with Ivoroid, which is a little more like what you might see on a Les Paul Custom or something. Fret size and material. Again, this is a pretty easy one. I went back and forth after talking with Aaron and a couple of my luthier buddies. Thanks for talking to me about it, Tom. And I decided to go with stainless steel frets. That does open up the window of, if I gotta do a little bit of fret work, it's like harder on your tools and it's kind of time consuming. But ultimately, I'm just gonna put the work in on the front end, and then hopefully those frets will just last my whole life. So I'm gonna go with the SS6105. So that's narrow and tall. Tall for ease of bending and narrow for intonation. I just think your chords are like slightly more in tune with a narrower fret, and it doesn't bother me. I like the feel of a narrow fret, doesn't bother me. It's the height I'm concerned about. So we're gonna go with narrow and tall 6105 stainless. Tuner hole size. I'm gonna go with the 25/64 here, which is the Schaller kind of thing. And again, the Schaller type tuners are just what I'm used to, the classic PRS type tuner. It's what's on a lot of my Fender guitars that I like and stuff like that. It tends to be Schaller. So I'm gonna go with the Schaller tuner here. Now, inlay shape. We have so many options and they're all great. So many of them are so cool. And I really went back and forth with this and I landed between the Meadowhawk and the trapezoid. So the trapezoid would look like this. We need to make that look the right color. The trapezoid would look like this, which is really cool. And then we also have the Meadowhawk, which would look like that, also very cool. Ultimately, I decided to go with the trapezoid. And the reason I want to do the trapezoid is there's a kind of uniformness to it, but also I'm kind of doing a vintage take on a Meadowhawk here. I think if I was doing the more modern look, if I was going to kind of have it more sleek and aggressive looking, I would prefer the Meadowhawk. But where I'm kind of going for a more 50s, 60s inspired look here with the guitar, I'm going to go with the trapezoid. Again, kind of as a shout out to my SG. So we're going to do that, and of course with the white pearloid material, so it'll show up. I don't love like different pearloids. Like to me, if it's going to be pearloid, it should be white. That's just the look that I like. Side dots. You might think this isn't that important, but it is if you play in a live environment, especially if you play on stages where they have some actual lighting and stuff, and they kind of change that throughout the night, maybe without your knowing. So I have a white binding, or a pretty close to white binding. So I need a dark colored dot, and I opted to go with black side dots. And the reason is I find that on a light colored binding or a light colored fingerboard, a black dot is easier to see than the reverse. So if it's like a unbound black ebony fingerboard and it has a white dot, I think that's a little harder to see under stage lights than white with the black dot, because I think the white is just reflecting enough light that it's just easier to see. So I'm not gonna go with like glow or anything like that, because that's a really cool feature, but I also kind of think it doesn't make sense with the sort of vintage vibe and the whole thing I'm going for here. So we're just gonna go with black dots. The string nut. So what I've decided to do here is go with the R3 Floyd Prep with mounting holes. And the reason is, if you watch my interview with Eddie from Kaler, they make a locking nut that will drop right into this. But also, he and I talked about the GraphTech Unlock, and I have one of those to try, and that would also use this kind of shelf prep. So I'm gonna go ahead and have the holes drilled, and that will give me the ability to use either nut, whichever one works better for me, and I can kind of try both, switch out and see what works. So I'm gonna go with the R3 Floyd Prep, so that's a big shelf nut here, you can see. And there will not be any nut on this neck when I get it. It'll be something I have to install. All right, mounting holes, of course, we're just gonna do the standard 4-bolt, because that's what we have done in the body. And then the neck heel shape, we wanna do the strat shape. And that just leaves us with the finish here. And I'm going to select none. And the reason is I decided that some of my favorite guitars neck-wise, like the feel in my hand that I like the most, are guitars that have had the finish worn off the back of the neck, or they don't have a finish, or they have an oil finish, something really light like that. And I just really like the way that feels. And as the more you play those guitars, like your kind of oils from your hands will start to kind of soak into the wood. And that's just, I think, the best feeling neck for what I like. So I'm gonna go with no finish, and I'm going to myself apply either like a true oil or a Danish oil, boiled linseed, something like that, some kind of oil finish. And I'll do enough coats that it really, I think, does a pretty good job protecting the neck, sealing it, kind of penetrating the wood, and also giving it a little bit of a sheen. I'm not gonna go high gloss, most likely, but just enough to kind of get a nice feel and look and protect it. Now, let me just, I can't overstate this. If you're following along and you're doing anything like this yourself, if you go this route, if you put no finish on the neck, Warmoth will not cover this warranty-wise unless you put a hard finish on it. So either you have them do it, like a nitro or something like that, either you have them do a hard finish, or you do it yourself. But if you do what I'm gonna do, which is put an oil-based finish on it, they will not warranty protect this. Now, I understand completely. I feel pretty confident because I do a good job of taking care of my instruments in terms of like where they are kept and like the climate and humidity. I don't play my guitar out on the beach or something, you know, where it's in a dangerous environment. And also I am going to use a fair bit of care applying a pretty substantial amount of oil finish. I'm gonna do several coats to get a really good deep penetration of the oil, so I'm not super worried about it, but I just feel like that bears mentioning. So anyway, let's add that to the cart. All right, and that ends up bringing our subtotal to $1,133. That's of course before like tax and shipping or anything. All right, so I'm not gonna show you all my shipping deets or anything, but I'll go down to shipping methods here and you can see how much this is gonna cost. So I live on the east side of the United States, on the East Coast, and Bournemouth is of course in Washington, which is on the West Coast, so it's got to go all the way across the country. So shipping is a little steep. So I'm gonna go, I have the options here for USPS or Priority Mail or UPS. And I have not had great results with USPS shipping large packages, but UPS tends to do, I think, a pretty good job for me. So I'm gonna go with UPS here. So we'll just add that. All right, so all of our parts costs about $11.50, about $115 in shipping, and then $88 in tax, which leaves our grand total as $1,345.45. Which, you could make the argument you could buy a guitar, like a pretty nice guitar, for that price and not have to put all this work in, and that's true. But this gives me that really fine-tuned level of customization here, and I'm excited about it, and this is like a fun project for me. So I'll go ahead and order this and get it on the way. All right, perfect. Now we just play the waiting game. Okay. Oh, there we go. Oh. Man, it's really outstanding delivery time. I'm surprised Aaron was able to drive all the way across the country that fast. Ah, box is very unwieldy. There it is. Aha! Meadowhawk. In a beautiful, actually kind of grainy, like figured piece of basswood. It's got some nice like wavy grain going on. Don't make me translucent this. As you can see, I had him do the Kaler route. We have the volume tone. We have the HSS setup. Beautiful contoured neck heel. It is nice and light. I would say like maybe 3 pounds or something. It's quite light. I was a little hesitant about the size of this body shape because this is like kind of a custom body shape, and so there's not a great frame of reference for me as to how big this was. And I kind of wanted a guitar on the smaller side because I'm not a big guy. But I'm happy to report that it is a nice compact body size. For reference, like here's my radius that I like a lot. It's kind of small. And then this is the Meadowhawk. Like they're pretty close. This is a little bigger, but it's not way bigger. And like here it is next to a Strat. This Strat is a little bigger. This is a little tighter than a Strat, I think. Also got the back plate taped on there. That's handy. I love that they just do the back plate for you so you don't have to try and fabricate something or buy something separate. They just give you the back plate. Thank you. The big money. Here we have my beautiful Meadowhawk neck. Look at that. Oh, this neck profile. I wish you could feel it. It's... That asymmetrical carve is so nice, especially if you have the kind of playing style that I do where you sometimes thumb over the neck. It's really nice. And it's got some very nice figuring going on there. Hopefully I can get it to really dance for you in the light. It's a very nice piece of figured flame maple there. We have a nice dark piece of rosewood with those mother of pearl inlays. Keeps trying to focus on my face. Those mother of pearl inlays. And then, again, we have that shelf nut up there for the either locking nut or unlock. I'm happy to see that this is what I would call an acorn type nut rather than an Allen key down in there. I just find those irritating. I like this kind of truss rod personally. So you can see I did the reverse headstock. And we've got the pre-drilled for the shelf nut there if we want to go that route. All right, well, I can't get it to focus, but it has Ivoroid binding and it looks beautiful. If you've ever seen the binding on like a Les Paul Custom or something like that, that's what it looks like. It's got a little bit of like a striping happening in it, which is cool. And of course, we got the trapezoid inlays, the nice, very immaculately installed stainless steel frets. They look very level to me. I can feel a little bit of like, not sharpness, but like a little bit of square on the edge of the fingerboard, both the fingerboard itself and the edge of the fret. So I am going to do like a little bit of edge treatment to get this really nice and like comfortable. But it would do that on its own after time anyway. You didn't have to do that. Let's throw them together and see what they look like. Loosely join them together. And it's going to look something like that. Look at that. This is wild. I started this project like almost 6 months ago now, and just to see it sort of come to fruition is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what this all looks like. Speaking of which, that leads me on to my next step, which is finish work. So if you've never done finish work before, it's a tedious, time-consuming process, and it has to be done patiently or it will look bad and it won't hold up right. So finish is something you have to take your time with. So I predict that the next video might be a while. So what I'm going to do is run the finish on both of these things at the same time separately, because as I said, I'm going to do 2 different kinds of finish. I'm going to do a nitrocellulose finish on the body, I think an opaque finish, but I haven't made up my mind yet. And then I'm going to do an oil-based finish on the neck. So this will involve no real prep work other than just wiping it down and making sure it's good and clean. And then I'll just start spraying. This, what I'm going to have to do is like a coat of oil and then let it dry for 24 hours, scuff it up a little bit, another coat of oil, let it dry for 24 hours. So I'll probably be able to do 1 coat a day, and I'll need to do, I would say, at least 6, if not 8, 10, 12 coats to get it to look the way I want. So this by itself will probably take a couple of weeks. This will most likely take quite a bit longer than that because nitrocellulose has to cure, and we're kind of entering the hot, humid area where I am now. So it's just not going to cure probably as fast as I would like. But all I have to do is do the primer and then the color coat and the clear. So there's no like filling and sanding and all that, which is why we do the DIY ready paint finish. It's worth it. As for finished colors, I do have some thoughts. My first inclination is to go with a candy apple red because I love classic candy apple red when done correctly, like a nitro candy apple red. Years ago when I worked at a music store, we were a Nash dealer, and we had a Nash Strat, like an S63, and it had a very slightly aged candy apple red nitrocellulose, and I just thought it was the most beautiful guitar. It was so cool. So I'm kind of inclined to go that route, but I also, I really like the sort of Sherwood green look is really cool. I have recently kind of become enamored with this sort of candy dark purple. I think that's a really cool color. And then, as it so happens, as there is some actual kind of like a little bit of wavy grain thing happening here, this I think would be pretty cool with a kind of burst finish on it too, like just a tinted lacquer. So if I was going to do that, I would probably do like what I would call the two-tone kind of tobacco burst thing, like you might see on an early 50s Strat or like a Norland 70s Les Paul or something like that, where it's just sort of like amber, just kind of ends up fading to black around the edges. And if I was going to do that, I would do what I called teardrop shape or the pick shape. I would do it this way. There's a little extra work involved with doing a burst and stuff like that. I'm not 100% on that either. I would love to know in the comments what you guys recommend for finish. What would you put on this? I'd be curious to hear that. But yeah, so I got to get trucking on finish now. And also that means it's time for me to go ahead and order my tremolo and my locking nut and the pickups and the electronics and all that stuff. So it's like time to start getting that stuff being made so that it's on the way. This will take me at least a month or 2 to finish. The neck will take a couple of weeks at least. And then we'll start putting things together. And sort of tuck in tight, see if I can get like a good thumbnail here. My YouTube face where I'm like, oh, everything's so surprising. I can't believe this thing happened that I've been working on. All right, thank you guys for watching, and thank Tervis for sponsoring this video. As I said, that finished work will take a little while, but I'm going to document pretty much all of that process, at least the interesting parts. And so in the next video, you'll be able to see the guitar start to kind of come together and take on its own life. And when the finish gets on there and I kind of bolt the neck to the body, for the first time, even before we start putting things in. I think you're going to really see like a guitar rather than just a bunch of parts. So I'm excited to see that. So be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell and go check out Tervis. And until next time, I'll catch you later.